Hi, so you previously watched a video on equivalent ratios. Now we're going to bump it up a level and talk to you guys about complex ratios. So let's go ahead and get started on your notes. It says a complex ratio contains at least one fraction. You will see complex ratios that have more than one fraction though. Fractions are just another way to represent division problems. And here are some examples listed below. So there are three different ways that you can write these ratios or complex ratios, which should have been talked to you about previously. The first way, you can see the complex ratio of 1/2 to 1/4. The other one uses the colon and says 1/2 colon 1/4. And then the last one is also written as a fraction within a fraction. So it's 1/2 over 1/4. You will probably see this one the most, but just remember that that is considered a division problem and you should be able to solve it. And I'll go over some examples with you on how to solve that as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and scroll down to go to the steps on how to solve it. So these are just the steps. The first one is to just set it up into fraction form, just like that last example we talked about. Okay, and then from there, your first number listed always goes on top, or it's listed first, and your second number listed goes on bottom. Think of this as a division problem, and this will help you tremendously. You will always divide by the bottom number. Whatever you do to the top, you have to do to the bottom and vice versa. So more than likely, we're going to show you what you have to do to the bottom first, and then that will help you and tell you to do that to the top. Okay, the bottom number as the denominator will always cancel out. That's the one we're going to start with and cancel out. Okay, your answer to the division problem on the numerator is your new simplified ratio. Okay, and then for ratios, you do not want to change them into a mixed number. You want to keep them in fraction form. Okay, just remember ratios, you don't want to change into a mixed number. Okay, so let's go over those three practice problems at the bottom. Okay, first, it says write the ratio of 2/3 feet to 1/5 feet in simplest form. So I first have to write it in fraction form, just like we talked about. So 2/3 over 1/5. Okay, and as we said, we always want to cancel out the bottom one. So if you consider this as a division problem, it's really saying 2/3 divided by 1/5. So like we've practiced last week, in order to divide fractions, you have to keep, change, flip. Flipping is flipping this bottom one. So instead of 1/5, we're going to flip it to 5/1. Okay, by flipping it to 5/1, this actually cancels out your bottom or your denominator of your complex ratio, which is why we've always flipped it. Okay, this always cancels out to 1. Since we had to flip it on the bottom, you're also going to flip it on the top. Okay, so now you're going to have 2 times 5, which equals 10, and 3 times 1 is 3. And since this is over 1, this is your final answer, and you will leave it as an improper fraction because this is your ratio of 10/3 feet. Okay, then the following one, it says write the following ratio in simplest form. We have 4/5 over 6/7, and they're both in kilometers. That's how you know it's a ratio, because they have the same units. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. It's always keep, flip, change. So, or keep, change, flip. So instead of 6/7, I'm going to have 7/6. That's going to cancel out my bottom one. And whatever I did to the bottom, I also have to do that to the top. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply that out because it was keep, change, flip. So when I do that, I get 28/30. Okay, you can divide both of those by 2 to put it in simplest form, and that's where you get your 14/15. That's going to be your new simplified ratio. I know previously I talked about canceling early or cross-canceling. You could have done that as well when you were solving this problem, and I'll show you how. The 5 and the 7, they don't cancel, but if you look at the 4 and the 6, 2 can go into both of those. So if you divide both of those by 2, You get 2 for the 4 and 3 for the 6. And then you can just do 2 times 7, which is 14. And then you can do 5 times 3, which is 15. So it shows you that you still get the same answer. Either way is fine as long as you simplify it. Then the last one, this is where you're going to get your whole number, but remember you always can write your whole number as a fraction by putting it over 1. So for this last one, you're going to write the ratio of 5 seconds to 8 over 9 seconds in simplest form. So I'm going to write it as 5 over 1 over 8 over 9 seconds. We're going to cancel out the bottom one, okay? And we do that by keep, change, flip. So this cancels out, giving you a value of 1. And we'll go ahead and solve this one, which gives you 45 over 8. And we're going to leave it as that ratio because they want you to leave it in fraction form. Okay, that's all your notes. So you're good for the practice. Make sure you get this checked by your teacher, and then you will be ready to move on to the next activity.